Welcome to Shorty SuperCoach and welcome to another player profile. We're going to talk Christian Salem, another man that could potentially be a guy who breaks out in our backline. I took a look at James Sicily the other day and there are quite a number of interesting guys to talk about in the backline. I do love taking a look at our defensive unit because it is a tricky one, the backline sometimes. Traditionally, it's the lowest scoring position, clearly. Most are defenders, which makes picking the good scorers quite difficult. So to identify someone who's going to take that next step and become a solid contributor into a keeper is really critical if we can land it. But obviously, as we know, if you get it wrong, then clearly you're in a bit of strife. You know, we've talked about Brayshaw, we've talked about Sicily, we've talked about Pierce Hanley, I've talked about Luke McDonald, I'll talk about Christian Salem now. You know, Heath Shaw is another guy in that sort of price range. If you would have seen him rack up a few touches the other night, for the record, I'm not sold on him just yet off the back of that performance. Still have my doubts. But look, I think the backline is interesting in that regard because of all the positions, it's the easiest to turn a mid-price type into a keeper. And I think that's why I do like to, if I'm going to take that punt on a mid-price type of fella, then I'd rather take it in the backline because ideally, when we pick a mid-pricer, if you can turn them into a guy that you keep for the whole season, or at least the bulk part, then that's as good as it gets. You've saved yourself trades, you've saved yourself a lot of coin, and that's perfect. I mean, obviously, a lot of mid-prices, potentially even towards your 200,000 mark, 250 mark, they're more so to make your money. But if we can get a guy that you pay a little bit more, 350, 400, and they can turn into a keeper, then boom, that's fantastic. Forward line, very possible. You know, likes of Petrarca, etc. as well. But midfield is difficult, hence I like to steer clear of that because there's so many points on offer in our midfield with all our guns. And for them to turn into a keeper, you need them at 105 plus. And it's very difficult to see a guy go from 80 average to 105. It's very tough. You know, we've seen the likes of, I think, Dane Beams maybe did it. Dangerfield, Sidebottom gave it a fair crack as well. But it's difficult to do. And I think in the back line, you look at a guy who's averaged 75 to 80-ish, realistically, if they can only put their average up 12 to 14 points, you can handle that. You know, put him at your D6. You know, if I'm looking at Salem, who averaged 79 last year, then if he can come out and get that to 93, then I'm more than happy, certainly to at least have him scoring good points, see how it goes, assess the defensive options, and it may well turn out that 93 is a handy D6. You just never know. If there's a few guys that really come on in leaps and bounds, then okay, he's made you plenty of coin, straight swap. But that's my philosophy around the back line. I think it's the easiest position to turn a mid-price type into a keeper. Therefore, I feel it's your most likely way to save a trade. And there are less options. You know, Doherty's out, Zach Williams is out. I've said these names before. Hurley, Howe, maybe not the best pre-seasons. And even someone like Elliot Yeo. Do we fully trust him? One good season. The Eagles could be struggling. Where is he exactly going to play? There's, you know, obviously we probably know a few of those answers to those questions. But there is a little bit of doubt around what is widely regarded as probably our number one defender alongside Laird. So there's a bit more uncertainty about the back line, therefore less guys we can bank on, therefore more of an incentive to take a punt. So there's your 4 minutes explanation on why Shorty likes talking about these defenders. But I will roll in to Christian Salem. 437k, as I said, 79 average last year. That was 10 up from his 69.8 in 16, 74 2015 and 34.4 from 12 games in 2014. Now, what do I like about him? I love that he's a beautiful kick. In the top 100 kick getters, I think it was, where Champion Data cuts off that qualification mark, he rated in the top couple, I believe, if not number one. But his kicking was elite, and that's what I really like to have in a supercoach, particularly a guy who is in our back line. The big thing for Salem, though, is the talk is he's going to be a midfielder, which I really enjoy and like the look of, because if we can get guys to be a midfielder and they're in our back line, well, we all know if you can cram as many midfielders into that starting 22, clearly that's going to help you because that's generally speaking where the most points come from. Sometimes there's players who are better when they're seeing the play unfold and they're more of a receiver. But generally speaking, absolutely getting in the guts and into the stoppages is crucial. And he's a former top pick. You know, what is he? Let me just check. Number 9, I think he was. Number 9 in the 2013 draft. He's a prime breakout contender. You know, he's nearly 23, the 46 games. He has struggled with a bit of injury. You know, his games tally 12, 10, 8, and 16 last year. And last year was really a mini breakout, if you like. And you do often see, that's why we talk about guys breaking out in their 3rd, 4th, and particularly 5th year, is because you'll often see they work into the system and then they consolidate in those first couple. And then you will often see sort of like a mini breakout where they go up 10 to 15 points and go from that, you know, sort of making your way at AFL level, you're averaging 50, 60, then you find your way between 70, 80, and you sort of establish yourself. And I think that's what Salem did last year. He started to establish himself as an AFL footballer, feel comfortable at the level, because he was a skinny fella. I think it was always going to take him a little bit longer to really feel physically right at AFL level. So I'm really comfortable in saying that I think Salem is the type of guy that fits the bill when we look at breakout contenders. He's in an exciting club too. A lot of picking Melbourne to be perhaps a breakout club, really make that next step as a team. And that will be off the back of players like Salem. So it sort of goes hand in hand, I suppose. The likes of Petrarca and Salem, 2 guys that are in my side. Now, if you're wondering, well, sure, do you have Brayshaw in your team? Well, he has since left my side, so I won't be doubling up on the Ds in my backline. But I am really enjoying what Salem is producing. I love the fact that he could be used through the midfield. I love that boot. And I just need a little bit of encouragement through the pre-season and I'll be really pleased. And I got a little bit of that the other week against North Melbourne. Now, he had reasonable numbers, certainly from how long he was on the ground. 19 touches, 10 of which were kicks, 11 contested. I really like that. Using it at 84%, really enjoy that. The 5 clearances, and he was on for 64% of the game. So, while I didn't see a great deal of that match, he is certainly producing numbers that say I'm a guy who's playing through the midfield. That's where my club wants me. It's my position to take. You know, he's had a run through there. He's a kicker. You know, he's not a guy like, you know, say Dalhouse, for instance, really concerns me, and I'm sort of umming and ahhing with Dal at the moment with can win the ball, but just handballs so much. And we know that kicking and effective kicking is just so crucial to the SuperCoach scoring system and just impact on the general game. So I really love that. Now, clearly the risks with Salem are quite obvious, and they're not specific to Salem, but more so just the fact of any mid-price type that we look at. If it goes wrong, then look, we're left wiping the egg off our face a little bit, because all of a sudden you've got to backtrack a little bit. You've probably got to open up a little bit of coin or downgrade or find that coin to upgrade to someone else as well. So that's clearly the downside. You could also say his body is a bit of a concern, clearly. You'd like to think he got over a little bit of that last year, but again, he didn't play every game. So he has had a good pre-season by all reports. I was reading an article the other day that he came back in just really good nick. Now, I know everyone's having a great pre-season. You know, how's Jono going? Yeah, he's flying. He's absolutely flying. He's come back great PBs. But Salem, they said, really came back with a great attitude and looked physically ready to go. And you don't always see that, and you don't always hear that. You know, everyone's flying, but for him to come back with a real change, a bit like what we saw with Clayton Oliver, there was a visual change in how he was presenting his body, and therefore you've got to be in that sort of physique to play midfield at this level. You've just got to be. I'm not saying he's going to average Oliver numbers, nothing like that, but I definitely think somewhere in the 90s is quite possible. So the negatives are definitely that body, the fact that he's somewhat awkwardly priced at $437. You know, some people might like to just go up a little bit and get a little bit more assurity with maybe someone they trust a bit more. Some people might not want to really look anywhere between that sort of mark because they don't want to take that potential risk. But as I said off the top, I don't take too many of those, and if I do, I like it in the back line. So I'm really about Salem at the moment. I'm really excited. I am excited about the Ds, so it's no coincidence that I have Petrarca and Salem in there, because I think they're two of their smooth movers, and I think they're primed to break out and go big. Been long touted to be superstar players, and I just think we could see a big step towards that. I'm not saying they're going to take out the Brownlow Quinella, but they will certainly be big improvers. Whether this is a good selection or not will depend on how much improvement they get. But obviously, being in the back line and the forward line, there's a little bit more generosity in terms of what makes that a good call. You know, those numbers are a bit lower than the midfield. That's why I feel mid-price guys are so tricky to nail in that midfield, because more often than not, you've got to trade them anyway. So sometimes I like to have that hope when I'm picking mid-price of, well, look, if it goes right, I've saved myself a trade. You know, I sort of like to think that, where I'm looking in the midfield, I go, even if this goes absolutely right, you know, let's take O'Meara, for example, even if I nail this, what are we thinking? High 90s? 95? You know, is that probably what we're thinking? Even if it goes absolutely cherry ripe. And even at those numbers, you can keep him for a long time because he's producing good numbers. But inevitably, we want to have all 8 midfielders hitting the 3 figures regularly and being absolute superstars. So I know it helps. It certainly helps with saving your money and providing good points at a great price. But the ideal circumstance is to have as many guys in your starting lineup in round 1 as you do in round 23. If you can nail those type of guys and make as little changes as possible, then clearly it's quite basic. That would be the ideal thing. And if we can nail Salem down, comes out and averages 94, 95, and he's there at the end of the season, then that's an extremely good pick. So that'll be my hope. That's what I'll be looking at. Again, they take on the Saints. I'll be looking for a little bit more encouragement, but I got plenty the other week. The article reaffirmed or reassured, if I get my words right there, that he is playing that sort of a role. The club wants him playing that role. He's enjoying it. That's what he wants. It really smells of a guy ready to go and take that next step. So I'm really about him, excited for what he can do. But let me know if you're on the Salem bandwagon as well, because I'm pretty confident he doesn't have a high ownership. I dare say it might even be 1%. So he could be a little bit unique as well, which is great. But let me know where you're at. I think the back line is generating quite a bit of discussion. You know, I think a lot of people have maybe Yo or Laird or Hibbard, you know, in your D2 or 3 or around there. But that third, fourth defender, I think people are really looking for who that might be and who's it going to really come from the clouds, because there's not as many clear-cut options. So makes for some good discussion. But let me know your thoughts on everything I've discussed. Any player profiles you want to throw my way, certainly requests are welcome. As I always say, give the video a like, comment away, subscribe to the channel too. We're absolutely flying. I think I say that every day, but just had a couple of days where I didn't check the laptop that much and got about 15 subs. So that's always great to click on, and we've passed the 1100 mark. So I really appreciate that support, guys. But we will also take a closer look at structure as well, more of the team structure stuff. And of course, I'll recap everything in the JLT from the weekend. Hopefully have that up on the Monday evening. So yeah, stay tuned for that. Cheers.